What's up, guys? It's Matt here. I wanted to make a video today showing you guys the mix breakdown for Faith Worship's latest cover that we did. It is called At the Altar, and it is a song that was recorded by Elevation Rhythm. It's a great song. We love it. It's been a song we've been listening to a lot, so we decided to do a cover for it and kind of do some spontaneous stuff at the end, just kind of see where things go in the recording. So we did that, and now I want to show you guys the mix breakdown. If you want to go, obviously, watch the original from Elevation Rhythm. It's an incredible song. Go to their channel and check that out. But also, you can go to Faith Church SC. You can go to that YouTube channel and watch the cover that we created, that we made. I'll put a link in the description below, so you can go watch that. But today we're going to be, like I said, breaking down the mix, looking at what we did for the production of this, some of the decisions that I made going into it, and yeah. So what we did here is we obviously recorded a cover. We decided we wanted to do something a little bit different, though. We didn't want to do the same thing that Elevation Rhythm did. We wanted it to be a little bit more scaled back. We didn't have like a live drum kit. We did like an SPD drum pad. We did a lot of that sort of stuff, very chill and mellow. That way we could just kind of flow and do whatever we wanted to towards the end of the song. And, you know, just kind of vibe. But we did use the original tracks from the song. So we used some multi-tracks. They were recorded straight into the board. I didn't put anything in here in post. But I had to play some games to make those tracks feel a little bit more mellow and washed out. So there's really only one trick I did. I'll kind of show you that as we get started here. But let's go ahead and hop in. All right, so if my computer freaks out at all, I'm sorry. It is what it is. It's doing its best, guys. It's an old computer. But I'm hoping that I have everything kind of figured out and we can go through this video without any issues. But yeah, here's the mix. It's a very, very basic mix. There's nothing crazy going on. You know, there's like, I think 11 audio tracks. Yeah, and really, it's actually, I think, like 10 or 8. Some stereo stuff in there, but there's only a few things going on. What you see in the video is pretty much what you get, except for the tracks. There's stereo tracks channel. All right, so let's start right here with the SPD. This one I didn't have to do a ton to. I wanted to add a little bit more beef to it, which is what I did. So you can see in the EQ, I just beefed it up here around 70 hertz, and took some of the low mids out to make some more space for the piano. I didn't want it competing, and I felt like it sounded pretty good. This is kind of what it sounds like. I do have some compression on there. So you can kind of see what the compressor's doing. It's taking a bit off. It's just evening things out, and making it feel a little bit more tight. The Sub 37. So if you don't know, the Sub 37 is it's a synth. It's a mono synth, and it sounds awesome. It's especially known for how well it does bass sounds, but it can do a lot of things. It's not just a bass instrument. I think people get that confused, but it sounds really, really cool. Now, when Taylor recorded his bass parts, they didn't have a ton of like low mid information in them. And what was there was just a little bit flubby. Like there wasn't a ton of drive on the original sound. So what I did here is a trick that you can do on bass. You can do on synth basses, whatever you need to. Since we didn't have a synth bass and a live bass, like a string bass, I split the Sub 37 to 2 channels. So they're identical channels. And one has a lot of like drive, and there's like a chorus on here, and I'll kind of show you. Let me show you what this sounded like before I started touching it. So So you can see here, it's good. It's a little flat, and in my opinion, I didn't feel like it was giving me as much from it as what I really needed in the mix. I really wanted the sub 37 to carry like a lot of the low mids and the lows of the mix. I just wanted it to feel like this wall of bass, basically, without just all being sub bass. So what I did, I used CLA bass here to add a bit of distortion. I do like the distortion that is on the CLA bass. I feel like it does a really good job. And then adding a little bit of compression. And I'm not really doing much with these faders here. It's really just being used for some drive and some compression, and then kind of gain matching a bit coming out of the output. And then I'm going into some EQ and cleaning up some of the flubbiness that can happen right around 200 hertz, just below it. Adding a touch of mid actually to it. Since I don't really have anything else competing for that space, I felt like it sounded nice to give it a little bit of that like 400, 500, just like some bass presence almost. And then taking a little bit out around like 2K. Now what you'll notice here is that this channel, the top is what I'm going to call it. I have a high pass filter that is rolled up here to about 120 hertz. So it's taking out a lot of the sub frequencies. It's not doing it's not like way rolled up or like really low. It's just kind of sitting right here, and I'm basically creating a crossover point for where I'm going to let the low channel kind of fill in the sub stuff. So I'm basically treating this like an overdrive or like almost like a rhythm section. I don't know, like a rhythm guitar, because I'm actually got, if you look here, I've got some Uber mod on here. So I'm doing some chorus, pretty high mix, you can see, because I'm trying to spread it out, make it feel really big. And then I have this amazing plugin. I absolutely love this thing. This is the Black Box from Plugin Alliance. Amazing plugin. This thing sounds so good. It's like secret weapon when it comes to bass instruments. It just adds so much flavor and drive and stuff to it. You know, really like, it doesn't just sound like you added a layer of distortion, which I feel like you can do on bass so easily, is like whenever the bass chills out, it still has all that overdrive on it. This like reacts to the input signal so well. I feel like it does a great job with that. So that's what I'm doing on the top channel. And then on the bottom channel, I have an LA2A, a really slow compression it's being driven really hard. It's doing a lot. And then I'm using this F6 to create my crossover point here. That's all it's doing. I'm not doing anything else with that. I wanted a little bit more control than what I have on the SSL, because the SSL channel will only, the low pass filter only goes down to like, it's like 3 kilohertz, I think. And I needed it to go way lower than that. So that's why I'm using the F6 on this. And then I have this guy, and it is a compressor that is sidechained to my drum group, which you'll notice my group names are way crazy right now. And that is because I don't relabel my IO per session. It's just whatever my IO is programmed to be on Pro Tools. So I'll admit I mix a little messy. So some things are like weirdly labeled. I just use random auxes to get the job done. I don't really care what they're named, especially on a session this small where I'm trying to get work done quick. This is a compressor that is sidechained to the drum group, which is where the SPD is going. So the SPD is going into this little group, and I'm only using that to trigger the this compressor, because you can't sidechain directly to a channel. You can only do that to an aux or like an interface input, which I'm not using. So that's what's going on there, because I want the kick to be able to breathe a little bit. I'm letting the kick kind of to come through, and then it almost feels like an 808 when like the kick comes in and then bass kind of follows it. That's basically what's happening here. So you heard what the sub 37 sounded like before. Now with the bottom in here as well, you can hear it together. So you can hear there's a ton of high-end information in there now. I wanted that. I wanted it to be really gritty. I felt like I was able to drive that pretty hard before things sounded wild. So I really liked that. I felt like it worked well with the keys and didn't get in the way too badly. Next, keys, which is probably the most important thing in this mix. You can see I've got some volume trim automation here, which I did a bit of automation on this project. Let's look at the this channel and kind of what it sounds like. Let me just solo it out. Let's make it dry. So you notice you can kind of see it in the waveform here. The keys player, Jeremiah, he is very dynamic with his keys playing. So like you'll see this section right here, it has like a lot of really intense stuff going on, really percussive, like very high gain, input gain. And then like this section over here is pretty low. This section right here is crazy low, right? So I did have to play some games. I didn't want to do clip gain automation, which if you know what that is, it's basically where you go in and you split the session or your clip up into a bunch of clips, and you increase the gain or decrease the gain and try to reduce the dynamics before you ever hit any plugins at all. I like to do that on vocals. If I can avoid it on instruments, I do, just because I feel like it can take some of the performance away. And I like to keep what he played was really good and it sounded great. I just needed to kind of work with his dynamics a little bit. So I do have some compression going on, and I'm increasing gain overall. So let me pull the SSL channel up here. So I've got my gain trim turned up a bit. I'm cutting some mids right around like 800 hertz, and adding some top back in just a little bit. You can see it's like 1 dB, like 1.2, 1.5. This is just adding some mid-range because I felt like it was losing a little bit of life when I cut just below that. So I added a little bit, didn't really touch the bottom, just rolled up a little bit of a high-pass filter. And that's what's going on there. The LA2A is adding some gain as well. I'm pretty sure. I would imagine it is. Let's listen to this. Yeah. You can see I'm hitting that LA2A pretty hard. Let me move this up a little bit so I'm not in the way here. I was hitting that LA2A pretty hard. And if you're wondering why I'm using the UAD version, just playing around with it. I'm kind of comparing UAD, the LA2A with the Wave stuff right now. It was free a little while ago, so I wanted to play with it. Sounds really good, so can't complain. But yeah, that's why. So you can see I'm doing a lot of gain reduction, like 5 to 7 at times when he's playing really big. I didn't feel like it hurt his sound at all. His key sound didn't have any compression on it coming into the board, so it sounded fine to me. So I was driving it pretty hard. I liked what it was doing. So there's that. And then what is this F6 doing? Let's see. Do I have any... I don't have any sidechain stuff going on. So it's just correcting some stuff here, pulling a little bit of low out, some subby stuff around 100 hertz, and then adding a little bit more mid. I do this at times because sometimes the SSL channel, like I like what I get out of it, and then after compression I'll use something like an F6 or something that I can visually see what's going on and get a little bit more meticulous. If there's something that I hear in the sound and I feel like changing the SSL is going to fundamentally change the sound going into compression, then I will I'll add an EQ after compression just to kind of clean it up a little bit. If I feel like I'm taking massive swings at it, then typically I will go back and try to get the sound right, either at the SSL channel or whatever my pre-compression EQ is. But I mean, there's no rules here. Like if you use some EQ after compression, that's not going to hurt you. And then glue verb, that's just like a room style verb, just to kind of make it feel like it's in a space. I've got my sub 37 going to that as well. I don't have the sub going to it, so that like low channel of the sub 37. I only have the top going to it, but it does kind of help give it some space. It's giving it some like air, which you might be able to hear. Let me solo it out. Drive it real hard. Yeah. So it's definitely working. It's doing a job. It's pretty subtle. And if you were to take it away, you probably wouldn't. Most people probably wouldn't notice it, but I like it. These pads here, these were just pads that Jeremiah was playing. It's the 3 and 4 channel off of the Nord. So he sends a left-right piano and then a left-right synth. He wasn't doing a ton with it. It was kind of just there. And honestly, I didn't even touch this, I don't think. I just kind of let it be to maintain his performance with it, because he did blend it in later in the song. But yeah, you could see like I don't even have any processing on it. I don't even think I changed the fader. Yeah, it's sitting at 0. Yeah, there wasn't anything to do with it. So I didn't mess with it. And that is something to think about, folks. Sometimes just don't mess with it. Here we go, tracks. So this is something that I did mess with a bit. So these were just some stereo tracks. They didn't really put a ton of... when the guys made this session, they weren't thinking through the all of like how it would sound with the band necessarily. I think they were relying on me to kind of make it work. And the tracks for this song get pretty intense. Like, let me slow it out and just show you. Yeah, so you could tell like there's a lot of high-end information. It just didn't feel like it worked for this. So I went and turned on my producer brain and used the F6 and rolled off the top quite a bit here. So then we were kind of left with this. And I also sidechained the vocal bus, the dry bus, to this midsection here to kind of pull it out even more to let the vocals breathe. But this is what it sounds like. So you can see how much top end information I'm taking out of that. I just wanted kind of the mids, but I didn't want to completely kill all the top. So that's why I let it breathe a little bit more and then added that side chain to the vocal group to kind of get some stuff out of the way. And then there's a perk track here. I kind of did the same sort of thing here. Rolled off some top, added some low. So there's some of those big booms that I wanted to cut through the mix a little bit more. But yeah, just shelved the top a little bit. Because I didn't want it to sound like super distant. I feel like that didn't make sense. And I also felt like that would start competing with what the SPD was doing, what Zariah was playing on the SPD-SX. So I kept it in there so you could still hear. You got some shaker, tambo. I felt like doing that made it feel like I didn't just take an LPF and go way down with it. I felt like by combining the perk track that kind of breathed a little bit more with the track, with the like melodic tracks, that it felt a little bit more intentional. It felt like we made those tracks to sound that way, even though we did not. So yeah, that's what we did there. Now you notice I've got Ashley's track frozen here, and you'll actually notice as well, I've got some stuff turned on my turned off on my master, disabled. That is because my computer is running like garbage right now, and doesn't surprise me, but it's not liking the fact that I am recording on OBS and showing you these crazy vocal chains at the same time. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to show you Sophie's. I've got Ashley's track frozen, so I can't really dig around in here, but I'm going to show you Sophie's track. And we'll start kind of up front here. Let me make these waveforms a little bit bigger so you can see what's going on. Now, I did do some clip gain automation on the vocals. That is something to be aware of. Vocals, I feel like I do every single time. I'm always going to do some clip gain automation. If not like in the clip itself, then let Melodyne do it. If you've got Pro Tools, the newer version, I don't even know what version this is. Version whatever. I don't know. But if you've got Pro Tools, you'll have Melodyne Aura built in. So you can do your Melodyne edits live without opening a plugin, which is super cool. Being able to do that is so convenient. And I did a lot of Melodyne work to these tracks, trying to keep it very tasteful. But also, you know, it's a live recording. We didn't do multiple takes. So wanted it to be a good representation of their vocals, and, you know, go forward from there. But let's open up Sophie's track here. So I'm going to turn everything off and kind of show you where we started from. Let me turn off all these sends. And here we go.
Things I've treasured couldn't come close to your presence. Grace upon grace, who could measure? No, nothing could measure.
So you can see, like, that dry recording is already great. Like, there's not a lot of noise going on in the background. Now, once we start to gain stuff up, we're going to hear some noise. And that was actually an issue I ran into, especially on Sophie's mic. She does tend to sing a little bit softer. So sometimes I run into that with her, as I'll have to gain things up to the point where I do get a little bit of noise in the background. But these are, those microphones are the DPA de factos, the linear ones. They don't have the soft boost, but they are killer vocal microphones. And yeah, they really do sound good. And they do sound better than V7s and 58s. Now, do you need them? Probably not, but they sound great. So I'm not going to complain about them. In my opinion, they don't sound as open as the Neumann, the KMS 105, or the 104. They don't have that openness, but in 99% of situations, I believe that's honestly better, because they have way better side rejection, like off-axis rejection, and they do have a smaller sweet spot. But if you learn that sweet spot, I don't think there's a better vocal mic out there for live stuff. But yeah, so you can see her dry take sounds really good. Now, what did we start to do? We started to, in the SSL channel, roll off some low end. And that's the thing with the SSL. I've talked about it before. You can roll that way up. Let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger here. Yeah, look at that. All right. So you can see I rolled way up here, roll up to 300. I'm taking even more low end out around 350, 400 area with a bell filter, rolling that down. Didn't take any mids out. And there's a reason for that. Except for these high mids, I did roll off her vocal a little bit, but I don't think I actually did on Ashley's. And then I added just a little bit of presence with a bell filter around 5K. I felt like for this particular performance, it made sense to not just blow out the top with crazy, like a crazy lifted, 10K and up, just a 10 dB shelf. I didn't feel like that was super necessary or anything that I needed to do. And yeah, so I didn't do that. But I did take a lot of low end out, but I tried to leave as much low end in as would ever be necessary in order to make sure that I don't just like scoop all the life out of the vocal. But obviously we've got to get rid of some of that proximity effect. Now I am trimming her gain up quite a bit, like I said. it's a thing. And then right after that, I'm going into Vocal Rider. Vocal Rider is doing even more dynamics work. So this thing is just, I've got it set pretty tight. So it's only between like 3 and, it's like got a 6 dB spread right now. So +3, -3. And then, yeah, that's how it's set up. Sorry. So it's not doing a ton, but it is doing some work. And that's just, again, fixing dynamics before compression. Then we have our first round of compression. And that is going to be our Vox here. We've got it pulled down. I never go over -6 dB of compression on this vocal, on this compressor. I basically just am using this again to smooth out dynamics before hitting any sort of colorful compression. I'm just trying to smooth things out as much as I possibly can. Now we hit our first round of like real compression with color involved, meaning I'm starting to add some real saturation to it. And this first round, I'm going for like really the peaks of her vocal. I don't really want to go past like -7 ever. I'm trying to kind of keep things pretty controlled here on this first round of compression, and then, or second round of compression, I guess. And then we're going into the LA2A. And so like that stack, the LA2A 76 stack is really, really common. LA2A, do not push too hard on my vocals. Some people do this the other way around where they push the LA2A really hard and then let the 76 take the peaks. I'm not doing that. I'm kind of doing the opposite. So I'm getting a lot of color from the 76 and then letting the LA2A kind of smooth things out a little bit afterwards. So I'm only going for a few dB of compression here. Really, I'm not going over -3 ever. But you start to realize, like, with all these layers of compression, I'm getting a ton of compression. Like, don't let me fool you here. When I say not a lot, by the time everything is compressed, I've got all these compression chains going on. There's a lot of compression. And then, lo and behold, we have yet another compressor. Look at this. Now, this is the C6, so it's multi-band compression. And mostly what I'm doing with this is dealing with proximity effect. So that low end buildup, that low and low mid buildup, I'm going to start to kind of carve that out a little bit. Not going too crazy with it. You can see my ranges are turned up, but I like to turn my ranges up and then set my threshold to kind of where I like it to be for the majority of the time. That way, like if there's a peak that comes through, it'll still clamp down on it. But yeah, so that's what I'm doing here. I did feel like there was like a specific weird resonant thing going on in her vocal between like 1.5 to 2K. So that's why I am using this filter. I don't typically use these, but sometimes I do bring them in just to kind of clamp down on very specific things. But usually I will, I'll let Soothe take care of that. But I know soothe is like almost like a dirty word, so I try to avoid using it as much as possible. Let's go here. So vocal tuning. I have been playing a lot with vocal tuning towards the end of my chain, especially in studio stuff. I feel like where I'm at with vocal tuning right now, especially with the waves tune, I feel like it does sound better to put after some compression. I know it's probably a lot of placebo, maybe. I don't know. I feel like it does sound better after some compression. So that's what I've been doing, and I feel like it does sound better. So take that as you will. Next one is Fresh Air. Now, this plugin, a lot of people really love it. I enjoy this plugin. I think that it does what it does pretty well. But I think some people think it's doing something that it's not. All this thing is doing is adding a high shelf and, high bell EQ to your sound. It's not magic. It's not doing anything crazy. And you can hear it. And a lot of times when you really, really push these, it will sound absolutely insanely harsh. Start to get really weird, weird stuff in the top end, all the stuff that you hadn't fixed in the recording, you're going to hear that. And so you really got to be careful with this, but I do enjoy it to push just a little bit towards the end of the chain. But I try, like, if I feel like I'm having to go over 20% on either of these knobs, then I'm going to go pre-compression and turn it up there. Because I feel like pushing your top end before compression makes a lot more sense. And generally, I feel like it sounds better. And then you can still do some after compression, but not doing too much because you're going to start to get some weird stuff going on, in my personal opinion. Okay, and then we have Soothe. And Soothe is doing the basic stuff here. Now, if you don't know what Soothe is like a resonance / bad frequency get rid of type thing. And it's working really, really hard in the background, basically just grabbing frequencies that might be peeking through but at the end of your chain or at the beginning of your chain, however you want to set it up. And it is going to kind of get rid of some of those. Now, there's a lot of settings that you can set up to make it sound a little bit more natural, but I will say Soothe 2 does color your sound a little bit. And in some ways it can be nice, and in some ways it can be really bad. So if you are using Soothe and you start to push it and you start to notice, oh wow, it's getting rid of a ton of stuff that I didn't even know was there, and like it sounds so much better. What I would suggest is to bypass it and A/B it a number of times with it on and with it off. And if you like what it's doing, but maybe it's adding a lot of artifacts, then try to figure out how to tackle that with either like multiband compression or EQ before going into Soothe, and then let Soothe kind of do very minimal work. So I still use Soothe. I use it on almost every vocal because most of the time there's stuff in there that I'm not going to be able to fully catch with the C6 or with EQ and stuff like that. And I might want to drive my vocal a little bit harder without having crazy resonance stuff peeking through. So there's right and wrong ways to use Soothe. Using it as just like a blanket, I'm going to use this on every single thing to get rid of nasty frequencies. Well, I mean, it's never going to sound right if you use it that way. But if you use it intentionally and you say, okay, there's a specific job I need to use Soothe for on this track, and I want to try to get rid of some harshness on the vocal, then I think it's going to do a great job. Specifically with Ashley's voice, when she goes to her like upper register type like head voice, it tends to open up and she gets really, it's not nasally, but it's got a lot of sharp stuff going on in there. And between like 1 and 3 to 4K, it's really going to, it can sound really piercing if you're not careful. So like kind of letting Soothe clamp down on that a little bit will definitely be beneficial. But just be aware that Soothe is changing some things in it that it might not show in the graph here. It might sound like distorted. You might lose some top end. You might lose some things that you liked. Sometimes Soothe will sound like a blanket over your mix, and that's not what you want. You want to use it in a way that's a little bit more intentional than that. So if you feel like when you turn Soothe off, oh wow, now my track is like breathing again, then you probably used a little bit too much. So just be aware of that. And then at the very end of my chain, I have my de-esser. It is doing minimal work, but it is working. So I've got it rolled way down here. And then threshold pulled down, range pulled down. So, let's kind of go through, let's listen to what it sounded like dry, one more time. And then, we will kind of pull in every, plugin as we go here.
Things I've treasured couldn't come close to your presence. Grace upon grace, who could measure? No, nothing could measure. And I'm returning back to the one I am running to give him my love, 'cause he took a sinner like me He washed me in grace and then set me free. Oh.
Cool. Now, what I haven't talked about is the my vocal buses here. So my dry bus, I don't have anything on it, and my crush bus, these are parallel buses, so each one of my vocals is going to both of these. My crush bus is this guy, and it is an 1176 that is just cranked like crazy. Sometimes it's pulling like crazy numbers here.
Measured. Couldn't come close to your presence. Grace upon grace, who could measure?
That's the crush bus.
No, nothing could measure.
And then this is the dry.
I'm returning
Blended.
back to the one I am running to give him my...
So you can hear there's a ton of color going on there. There's a lot of drive, a lot of saturation happening. And like when you solo out the vocal, it's like, wow, that's a lot of overdrive. That's a lot of saturation. And you'd be right. But it does sound good in my opinion when you blend it in with everything else. Now the vocal group, this is when you take the dry and the crush and you blend it together into the final Vox group. I do have some stuff going on here. So I've got a pull tech here that's pushing some low, pushing some high, just give some beef back to the vocal that I may have cut out earlier. And then giving it some very tasteful top end boost. You know, I do have the attenuation turned up, so it's cutting some of the real breathy stuff. And then going into a SSL compressor, a bus compressor, and then after that I'm hitting this guy, and then this is something that I played with a bit. So the drive knob on this, just driving that VCA a little bit, that group, for some extra saturation, I felt like it worked in this instance, in this track. I felt like it made sense. So yeah, that's what's going on there. Now I have a number of auxes that I'm sending things to. And like I said, pay little attention to the names. They're really not necessarily what they say they are. Some of them are, but some of them are not. So let's get started here going through our effects. So vocal verb. My main verb has a de-esser on it. That is to kill all the top end like sizzle. Because sometimes when you got a plate or a hall verb, it will just go crazy with that sizzle stuff up top. This is my primary verb. Like I said, I'm using the bright hall. So again, if I didn't cut all that stuff going into it, like the sibilants, you'd get a lot of that going into the verb, and it just sounds gross. So I'm cutting a lot of that with the de-esser going in. And then I have this F6. Sorry, didn't mean to press play. I have this F6 adding some like high mids here, like around 1K to 2K. This is another one of those situations where I just grabbed a EQ and threw it on there because I felt like it was missing something, and it made sense. And yeah, so it is set to where, like, if they really drive it hard, it pulls back, like it's got a range on it. And then, but it is kind of boosting it a little bit. And then I have a compressor after. This is something that I've been playing with a little bit more as well. It's more of a pop trick, but I feel like it does work in this context. And I'm probably going to start using it a little bit more because I feel like it worked really well on this track, especially. I just got this basic compressor that is sidechained to the vocal bus, the dry bus. And it is pulling the reverb basically back when they're singing. And then as soon as they stop singing, it kind of breathes again. So kind of takes some of the pressure off of like automating all of that. And because I don't have a great like automation controller, it's kind of a pain to do all that. And also it just does it really well. So it gets the verb out of the way, so you don't have to sit there and automate everything perfectly. So this is what the verb sounds like. Let me just send to the verb.
Measured, couldn't come close to your presence. Grace upon grace, who could measure? No, nothing could measure.
Yeah, so it's just a tasteful haul, in my opinion. I feel like it sounds pretty good. Now you do notice I've got Soothe turned off on my vocal group, and I have some stuff turned off. I've talked about that already. It's because my computer is struggling, and I didn't feel like it impacted the sound that much, but it is. Just be aware. It's turned off. I have this interesting thing that I was playing with here. I just called it 12 up, and it's going into the extras. I've got some Alter Boy here, basically pitching everything up, formant shifting everything up 12 semitones, and then I've got Valhalla Shimmer happening as well. And then it's going into this F6 that is like low passing everything. So this is the thing I like to do in production a lot when I'm making music, and it's where like you shimmer everything, like add a lot of shimmer and top end information, and then high cut it, and I feel like you get this like really interesting effect that happens. It feels like there's something you're not hearing. It feels like distant, like it's there, but it's not there. And you can't really hear it, but it does kind of create this illusion that's really interesting. But I wanted it to kind of give this like vocal chop type situation. Let me see if I can find a section where I used it. It's a very, very specific effect that I used like once on the song because I was just playing with it. But here I think is where I used it. Let's listen.
Nothing I wouldn't offer. There's no waste at the altar.
Do you hear it? Yeah. So it's like a vocal chop almost. It's kind of just like layering up above her voice. I thought that was kind of cool. It was an interesting effect. But you can play with stuff like that. That's fun stuff to do on mixes. Just don't make it super obvious if it's like a mix and you're not like producing it. Yeah, so let's look at the vocal chorus. I've talked about most of these sends before, but for those of you that have never seen it before, let's look at it. So my vocal chorus is an Uber mod and mixes all the way up. And this is kind of what it looks like. And then it's going into the Mini Mariquin distortion, driving it again a little bit harder. And I just kind of blend this into taste. It's just a chorus. And this is what it sounds like. Let's find a section with.
Where the tears of the desperate reach the feet of the Savior. Nothing I wouldn't offer. There's no waste at the altar. Where the heart of surrender meets the hands of the Maker. Nothing I...
So yeah, it's just adding a little bit of flavor. That's all it's doing. It's not super obvious. I want it kind of tucked, but it is there. The next one is the vocal slap. This is just a slap delay. Let's hear what that one sounds like.
Where the tears of the desperate reach the feet of the Savior. Nothing I wouldn't offer.
So yeah, another really subtle one that honestly, if you were to take it away, you probably wouldn't notice. But it's just adding like a very faint, almost as if you were recording in a room and you weren't even intentionally trying to get the bounce back off the walls, but you were getting a little bit of it into the mic. Just adding just a touch of that to give this like fake space, to make it feel like you're recording in a real environment. And then the delay, I've been playing a lot with the Echo Boy Jr. This is becoming my favorite delay right now, to be honest, because I feel like it does everything I want it to, and it's so freaking sweet. If you are not using Sound Toys stuff, I cannot tell you how much I love these things. They're so good. They're just so creative. Like their sound is an instant vibe. And I feel like every single time I use it, it's like, man, that sounds so good. It just sounds right. It sounds exactly the way you want it to. But I've been playing with this a ton. Didn't use a ton of delay on this track. I'm going to be honest. It didn't feel right to use a ton of delay. But I did use some in the choruses to kind of make a little bit of extra space. But I was trying to kind of tuck it a little bit so you didn't hear the delay, which is why I actually I have the like some saturation turned up and got some high cut. Like I'm trying to tuck it just a bit. I don't want it to be like super obvious that I'm using it. But that's what this sounds like. Let's see if this is a section of the song that it's being used.
Reach the feet of the Savior. Nothing I wouldn't offer. There's no waste at the...
Yeah. So in this section, it's really subtle. I did do some automation on this track with the delay. I automate delay a lot. That's something that I will typically do. Yeah. So like you can see I drove it here and then pulled it in for the second part of this. Yeah. Like there's a lot of delay automation that I'll do. Just if I feel like it sounds good. Now, towards the end of the song, I turned it off completely because I felt like during those like spontaneous moments, it needed to be out of there and gone. But I did use it. And then the glue verb, I did put a little bit of this on my vocal. Just to, again, make everything sound like it's in the same space. And I have a preset that I use here. I stole this from somebody else. If you know, you know. But this is a great preset to use. And it just gives you everything a sense of space. So I'll kind of show you what that sounds like.
Where the tears of the desperate reach the feet of the Savior. Nothing I wouldn't offer. There's no waste at the altar.
So with all of the effects in, what was the drones one? What did I use for that? Oh, that's the 12. Okay, I don't even think I used that on hers. With all the effects.
Where the tears of the desperate reach the feet of the Savior. Nothing I wouldn't offer. There's no waste at the altar.
Let's turn them all off.
Where the heart of surrender meets the hands of the Maker. Nothing I wouldn't offer. There's no waste at the altar.
Cool. So like that sounds really good, right? Nice. And then the master. Let's talk about my master chain here. And I'm going to pull some stuff in and see if my computer freaks out or not. But I like this guy. Luke Hendrickson uses these two, and I feel like they sound pretty good. They're like, it's just a harmonic exciter and the sonic maximizer. This is an old rack unit that people used to use back in the day, and everybody used to talk about the, like it does some magic to your stuff. And these are just exciters. That's all they are, really. And they do add a little bit of sauce to your master chain. So let me turn off all my mastering plugins here, and then we'll pull everything in one at a time. And again, hopefully we don't have any issues. And then I'll tell you about this one here in a second, the declick.
Where the tears of the desperate reach the feet of the Savior. Nothing I wouldn't offer. There's no waste at the altar. Where the heart of surrender meets the hands of the Maker. Nothing I wouldn't offer. There's no waste at the altar. There's no waste at the at the altar, and every victory at the altar. Fear and anxiety cannot live here. There's no waste at the altar. Let your heart sing out and tell him you love him. Don't make it perfect.
Cool. So you kind of saw the master here. What I'm doing. It's a pretty basic mastering chain. I've got some harmonic excitement going on, and then I've got this pull tech that's doing again some more lift in the low and the high, just creating a little bit more of that V curve. And then this guy doing again a little bit more of the same, just a very subtle stuff. So you can see I've got this is only doing like 1 to maybe 2 dB and the bands that I'm using it on, but I also have this one like just very slightly pulled down, so it's getting a little bit of separation between the low sub stuff and the mids, just to kind of get rid of mud. And then I have this guy. I really like these, the L3, the 16, and the LL. It depends on the context that you need. Obviously, you can't use the L316 live, but you can use the LL live, and it's basically the same idea. So these are just like a multi-band limiter, and it starts to kind of clamp down on specific things that are coming through the mix instead of just clamping down on everything when one piece of the information goes up. Now it does color your sound a little bit. Like it does start to kind of shape things a little bit, but I actually really like that. I like that you can kind of send some stuff into it and it'll start to smooth things out on the master, which I appreciate that. So I do 2 rounds of limiting usually. One with the L316 or the LL, and then an L2 at the very, very end. And then this guy, the J37, this is just a vibe machine. I like this thing a lot. You can use it for a lot of different things, but I'm using a preset here that I've kind of changed slightly. I don't even remember what I did. I think I turned the saturation up a little bit. This guy, it sounds sweet. You heard when I kicked it in, it just adds some lift to the low mids, kind of brings back some of the stuff that I took away earlier in the mix, which I really like. I like the way it sounded. It feels like it just gives everything some meat, some tape sound, right? And then I'm just using this L2 to bring everything up to where I want it to be, coming out of everything. So yeah, that's all we're doing in the master. You heard what it sounded like. My extras and band bus stuff here, it's doing the same thing that I usually do. SSL comp into an NLS bus. I don't think I'm using any drive on either of these. No, I'm not. They're just there, kind of adding again, giving it some analog flavor, but nothing crazy going on. So yeah, I think that's about it. Cool. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. It was fun kind of showing you guys around this mix and the decisions that I made. And I hope that you guys may have learned something. I felt like this is a really fun mix for me because I don't get to mix stuff like this very often. That's really chill and like laid back. I feel like in a lot of ways it could be kind of overlooked, and you can kind of think like, oh, that's going to be super easy. And then it's like, wow, I only have a few things to make this sound good. I have to be really, really intentional with my mix to make this really, really sound great. And I feel like it turned out really nice. I liked the way the mix sounded. Things that I would change, sure, in the recording, but you got to work with what you got. So hope you guys really enjoyed this. Check out the description. I got some stuff down there for you to check out. Go watch the original Elevation Rhythm version of this song and our cover as well. I think you're really going to enjoy it. Until next time, guys, take care.